You can easily switch your layout for your production needs in the Cinema 4D interface. If you look into the left hand side of the interface, we see this top button here, which is the switch layout. If I click down and hold, you notice that I've created a couple of personal layouts for my production needs. Let's go into the basic default layouts that you will find in Cinema 4D. You start out in the standard layout here, and you notice that this is the one we actually covered in the last video for an introduction to the interface. And you notice that we now have an animation layout, and you notice that the interface has changed. Now we have a viewport window, an objects manager, an attributes manager, and we have a detailed timeline. We have the scrub bar and the timeline area, but also we have a motion system and an F curve timeline down the bottom, so we can tweak the animation as we go across, so we can speed up keyframes from one keyframe to another, things of that sort. Going back in now, we switch to modeling. You see now we have a very large viewport, and we have our objects menu, attributes window, coordinates window, but we also have a structures palette down at the bottom. And if we go to the structure, you see the drop down that we have a create polygon is highlighted and ready for use, as well as the create polygon icon at the bottom. I'll show you a quick example. We'll go into a lot more detail when we're working with the surface tools, but I'm going to show you an example of what would happen. See, I created a cube, and if I go to my left hand side and click on this button or the C button onto your keyboard, which is the shortcut, this is to make any object editable. You need it to be editable to work into polygon, edge mode, or points mode. So if I click on this button, you notice now that the structure palette is now lit up. So you can do a ton of different things to edit this cube to make a nice 3D model and a very detailed model. And if I go to the structure drop down, we have the same thing. It's actually highlighted. Okay. Moving on next to the visualize. This is another basic default preset that you have if you want to work with architecture and you want to do a virtual walkthrough of a 3D environment or a 3D world. We will be talking about the virtual walkthrough plugin that you can use to record real-time walkthrough, not animating a camera itself, but just using keys on your keyboard to move around in a 3D space like you would in a game or a virtual walkthrough or experience. Now you notice that our switch layout icon is gone at this type of interface. If we go to window, then to layout, we can always go back to our standard, and then we have our switch icon once again. Now I'm going to show you some more advanced features with the switch layout icon and introduce you to body paint. So right now, by default, we are in the Cinema 4D menu. You notice that we have things like animation, simulation, MoGraph, character, and the Cinema 4D menu. When I switch to the body paint 3D menu, you see now that the drop down menu changes. We have things like select geometry, UV edit, tools, rendering processes, working with layers and images. So it's very important to know that when you do switch for the two available layouts, which is the body paint 3D paint, you see now we have corresponding to the modeling layout, we have it now for 3D paint layout. We have a big viewport screen here, and we have our painting tools and our layers to actually work with and draw and paint directly onto the 3D models using projection painting. If I click again and go to the body paint UV edit, you see now that the interface is set up to work with UV textures, Photoshop images, to work with mapping the textures onto the 3D shape itself. And again, always remember when I'm switching into this mode, you see now at the top we still see things such as animation, simulation, MoGraph. We really want to be fully into the body paint 3D menu when we're working in these different types of layouts. So now we're a little bit more accustomed to seeing that UV edit, the layers, and the image. Okay, so I'm going to go back to our basic Cinema 4D menu and go back to our standard. Okay, and we're back to the original default menu that when you open up Cinema 4D for the first time, you will see your actual interface here. Now I'm going to show you an example of some of the custom interfaces that I made for production. And you notice that I have little palettes or tabs here. So I can click on, and I have a tab in my main Cinema 4D interface that works with UV tools. I have a character animation tools. I can go in for things like hair, making hair design, and I have different types of scripts and plugins also at tabs to work with while I'm working in production. We'll be talking about creating palettes and editing interface to make your own customized interface as we go along in this series of discussing the different parts of the interface.